Hi there, and thank you so much for joining me for the presentation. This session will be talking about how to navigate Parkinson's, and I've really pulled this together for people who have been newly diagnosed and are looking for the next steps around exercise and good behaviours in order to help you live with your Parkinson's as well as possible. My name is Melissa McConaghy. I'm a specialist neurological physiotherapist, and I have founded a program called PD Warrior. So I've been working in the Parkinson's space for well over 20 years. So hopefully I'll be able to give you some guidance and some good ideas and places to get started with this webinar. So moving on to the presentation, I think one of the first things I wanted to say is it is quite an exciting time in terms of what the literature is telling us and how well people can live and well manage their Parkinson's. So it's probably not a very exciting diagnosis, and I can appreciate that. But from the perspective of the literature and what we know about the condition, there is certainly a lot that we can do to support and help people. So just looking at this diagram here, the history of management of Parkinson's really started in the 1950s, certainly in the Western world anyway. There wasn't a lot that could be used to support people living with Parkinson's. There were very basic visual cues, but no medications or anything like that. Not until the 60s when levodopa was first introduced in the late 60s. And levodopa really has become the mainstay and the main treatment for people with Parkinson's. And it has essentially taken Parkinson's from being something that people died of to something that people live with. And that really has transformed the lives of people living with Parkinson's in the modern age. Drugs have moved along somewhat, but there really isn't anything as powerful or as potent as levodopa. That does still remain the mainstay. Exercise has been around, but really not very specific for Parkinson's and certainly not tailored to each individual. So you can see there in the 80s, even in the 2000s, exercise was very much considered complementary. Deep brain stimulation was introduced in the 90s, and it can be very, very effective for some individuals. Up to about 15% of people with Parkinson's will be eligible for deep brain stimulation. But essentially it supports symptom management. It doesn't change the progression of Parkinson's. And so that's why I guess I'm so excited working in this physio space and looking at the literature that I do to know that of everything that we know about managing people with Parkinson's and management of Parkinson's, exercise at the moment shows the only capacity and potential to slow symptom progression down. And so it is considered neuroprotection. And so in 2020 and beyond, we are very much tailoring exercise to improve your symptoms, to help you move as well as you possibly can, to think and feel as well as you possibly can, and to really look at that neuroprotective side of exercise. So what I want to do is take you through a few ways that you can get the biggest bang for your buck out of exercise and how you can stick with it long term. So just a bit of, I guess, context is there's quite a lot of literature looking at how active and mobile people are when they are first diagnosed with Parkinson's. And we know from the literature that even at that point of diagnosis, most people are already 30% less active than other people their age without Parkinson's. Now, that is a problem because the more sedentary you become, the more likely you are to pick up other comorbidities, so metabolic conditions, cardiac conditions, respiratory problems. It decreases your overall level of endurance, etc. And that has a big knock-on effect for how you deal with any bout of illness, any episode of further sedentary behaviour, falls and things like that. And there's been some more recent literature from Van Rosen, etc. And they basically tracked people over a period of time with Parkinson's, and they were able to determine that there were pretty much three different groups. There was a sedentary group, which made up just under 30%. A light movers group, which made up just over 30%, closer to 40%, and then a steady movers group that were, again, another 40% of the group. And they were able to show that the sedentary group, the people that weren't very active at all during the day, had poorer balance, poorer functional mobility, and were more likely to have fallen previously compared to the light movers. So all of this data is telling us that the very first thing you need to think about and start engaging with is activity of any description. Walking is probably a really good start. You just need to get moving. That's the first step for everybody. because independent of your Parkinson's, if you become sedentary, that will have a big impact on all of your daily activities, your function, your cognition, and that will be independent of your Parkinson's. So that's not to scare you, that's just to give you a bit of a kick in the butt to say you do need to start moving. We all as humans and individuals need to be moving regularly, consistently and effortfully. If you've got Parkinson's, there's probably a bigger underlining for that. So let's just have a look at cognition as well. This was a study that was published in 2022. They had participants that were part of the Parkinson's Progression Markers Initiative, which is a longitudinal cohort study of individuals newly diagnosed with Parkinson's, and they had over 300 people in the study. They followed them up for 3 years, and what they were able to show, if you can have a look at the graph over here, the blue part here is cognitively normal. The orange section of each bar is Parkinson's disease with mild cognitive impairment. And then the grey areas, which you see just at the top of the bars there, are Parkinson's disease dementia. And in the first group here, we have a group tracked over time, and they became more sedentary, less activity. And you can see that those blue bars started to decline and decrease, and there started to be a bit more grey coming in, which tells us that there is also a link between your activity level and your cognitive, your level of intact cognition. So if that is something that bothers you, there's another reason why you need to keep moving. It's very helpful for your brain as well, to keep your brain fit. The inverse of that in the other graph there is activity increased. For those tracked over that 3-year period who increased their activity levels, you can actually see that if they did have levels of dementia, or across the group at least, those levels of dementia decreased, and much more of that cohort were cognitively normal. So really compelling reasons, again, why exercise needs to become part of your daily life. All right, let's just talk about how we might tailor exercise more specifically to you, because it's really important not only that you're moving, which is the first step, but you get the biggest bang for your buck out of the literature that we're looking at the moment. So this pyramid here that you can probably see in the diagram here looks at aerobic exercise at the base and the foundation. So getting enough aerobic exercise is really important, and there's some really groundbreaking literature that's come through recently showing how powerful aerobic intensive exercise can be for you. There was a study by Delat and colleagues, and they were basically able to show that with intensive aerobic exercise, there was some preservation of the dopamine markers in the brain, which is really, really important. So there was changes being made at the cellular level because of the intensive exercise. The next step up would be resistance training. Now, this goes hand in hand with an aging population as well. So depending on your age, it may or may not be relevant for you at the moment, but we all do need to do resistance training, and we need to do more of it as we age. It's also really important for you with Parkinson's, and there's some really lovely literature supporting resistance training and the impact on your ability to move well, not just with strength, but also coordination and amplitude, force and scale of your movement. The blue area there on the pyramid is probably my favorite area, and that's where we can really help you to move at your best. Now, if you've been relatively recently diagnosed, you may not really feel that there's a lot of things that you're having trouble with because of your Parkinson's, and that's fantastic. Some people, though, when they start to really think about what they might be doing during their day, how they might compensate for various different things, there might start to be a few things that you say, you know what? I don't brush my teeth with that hand anymore. I've obviously switched to the other side without thinking about it. I don't wear zips and buttons anymore. I use, I just don't have them on my clothing anymore. I have Velcro on my shoes. I've switched the mouse to the other side. There could be any number of things that you've switched, changed, and really not thought about. That's where physiotherapy and a neuroactive exercise approach can have a massive impact on how you move during the day and get you back to doing the activities that you either have stopped doing or that you want to do better. And that could be in the workplace, it could be at home, it could be recreational sport, etc. And then there's a little bit of flexibility that is required to keep you agile, mobile, limber as well, particularly as you age as well. And there are some features of Parkinson's, like rigidity, that can make it quite hard to maintain flexibility if you're not working at it. So let's just have a look at some of the motor symptoms and then some of the non-motor symptoms, just so that we're all on the same page. So when we talk about motor symptoms, those are the things that are basically produced by your body and things that are characteristic of Parkinson's disease. So some of the main things will be postural instability, so feeling a little bit wobbly on your feet, possibly tripping or having a near miss. It may or may not lead to falls, but just feeling a little bit less agile on your feet. Other motor symptoms might be bradykinesia, so that's slow and small movements. Now, that is a very common characteristic of Parkinson's disease, and that can mean that you end up shuffling your feet when you walk, you might lose your arm swing, you might have difficulty with fine motor activities like putting on makeup or washing your face or things like that. That would be bradykinesia. Other motor impairments that some people might recognize would be tremor. So when you're resting, your tremor is visible or you're aware of it. If you get really stressed, you might notice your tremor gets worse. That also would be considered a motor impairment. So just looking at that wheel there, bradykinesia might be something that bothers you, tremor might bother you, your agility or your postural stability. Proprioception, so this can be impaired in Parkinson's as well, your ability to sense where your body is in space. If you have problems with that, you might notice that in the dark or at night when the vision's, you're not so reliant on your vision, you might feel a little bit more unsteady. You don't really see what's happening behind you. You can't feel what's happening behind you with your arms and limbs and things like that. That would be an area that we would want to work on as well. Some people have difficulty with their balance because of vestibular issues, and that would be something else that we would need to address. So if you are feeling less agile, it may actually not be because of proprioception or because of your agility. It may be something to do with how your brain synthesizes and processes information from your vestibular system. And there's all these other areas. These are all considered motor features. So what we would do as Parkinson's physios is we would have a look at all these different areas to really try and determine what is the best and most effective exercise program for you to get you back to doing all the exercises and activities you want to do, or get you into some that you hadn't really thought about doing. And just over here on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the iceberg. This is commonly used to kind of describe what is going on below the surface. So when we talk about that, we can see the motor symptoms. They're quite visible. So we often say that's above the surface there at the tip of the iceberg. But what's happening below the surface can sometimes be much more impactful for each person than what's above the surface. So things like fatigue, constipation, urgency with going to the toilet, changes in how you think, your speed of processing, keeping up with other people, synthesizing information. You might have a change of your mood, so anxiety or depression. You might not be bothered to do any exercise. I'd be surprised if you're here watching a webinar that is you, but it could be. You might be having difficulties with sleep, so REM behavior sleep disorder, restless legs. There are all sorts of non-motor symptoms that do have an impact on people living with Parkinson's. Safe to say many of those can be improved with exercise. So it's important that you do tell your treating clinician as much as you can about these non-motor symptoms as well, so they can be factored into the exercise prescription for you. So let's just touch on general exercise. So before I started the presentation saying you just need to move. You need to do as much movement as you possibly can. And the reason why I say that is because general exercise is still considered very, very effective for humans. Not Parkinson's, but for humans. It helps and promotes gut-brain health, improves your cerebrovascular health. And as I said, just because you've got Parkinson's doesn't mean you can't get other comorbidities. And the more sedentary you are, the more likely that you will have to deal with other comorbidities. So let's keep you fit and active and avoid that. So that's your cerebrovascular health. Exercise also supports oxidative stress and cortisol levels overall, so reduces inflammation. It can enhance mitochondrial function, which is really important for your energy powerhouse. So, reducing your levels of fatigue. What I often say to people is if you're really fatigued, it's kind of counterintuitive, but the more exercise you do, typically the less fatigue you have. And that's for lots of different reasons that we tend to go through in your consults as well. There might be changes with mood and mental health as well that can be enhanced with exercise, and then overall cognitive fitness. So the more exercise you do, the more likely you are to have increased blood flow through the brain. That clears out a lot of the trash and the rubbish. You need that regular blood flow as well. And people that exercise routinely have been shown to have larger brain volumes than people who are sedentary. So that, again, is really, really important for cognitive health. And I just have a bit of a play on a picture over here on the right-hand side. This is taken from, this is a cartoonized version, so it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I do like to use this to kind of demonstrate. If you had a 40-year-old triathlete, what we're looking at here is a cross-section through the thighs, where this is the bone, the femur through the thigh, and this is all the grey matter, this is all the muscle bulk that you'd expect in somebody that's really fit and active and in their midlife, so around their 40s. For somebody that's quite sedentary in their later life, same cross-section through the thighs, but what you see here with this white opacity is all the fat. So the fatty tissue that's also infiltrated into the muscle, because as we age, if we're not active, we do tend to lose muscle bulk. So sedentary behavior pattern leads to atrophy of your muscles, which means you get weaker over time. So that is what happens if you become sedentary, but that is not inevitable. And so what I like to show and demonstrate here is if you get involved in exercise, you're consistent, you're doing the right exercise, there's absolutely no reason why, looking at a cross-section through the thigh, we wouldn't expect to see the same thing as somebody in their 40s. So again, large muscle bulk because they're fit and active and mobile, not sedentary. So I do like to kind of use that to demonstrate my point around general exercise. Now, taking it on to the next step of what I think is really, really important is looking at neuroactive exercise and how this is really, really important for getting the biggest bang for your buck out of your exercise. And so we talk about that in 3 different levels. So we've got neuroplasticity, which is essentially your brain's natural ability to rewire itself. Now, what happens in Parkinson's because of this dopamine deficiency that you'll experience in your brain around the midbrain here is that you end up with an overall poverty of movement is kind of how it's described, but that's a bit harsh. Basically, it kind of takes your foot off the gas pedal. And so you have capacity to move well, but your default movements become smaller, slower. They require significantly more effort and conscious thought. And so what neuroplasticity aims to do is to really show you how much capacity to move you have and to show you how to achieve that functional movement. And we often use this tree diagram to explain that. So neuroplasticity is where you've got all those lush, rich, rich foliage in your brain. So I like to kind of use a spring tree as an example. There's new growth, there's new leaves, there's new life, there's birds who've laid their eggs, there's lots of butterflies, there's all sorts of activity and things going on in the brain. So that's what we want for our brain. Lots of connections, pathways, lots of life and activity. Contrast that to your winter brain where you've got this red deciduous tree where it's brittle, the leaves have started to fall off, the connections have, shriveled up. There's not a lot of life going on. That is the sedentary brain. That's a cartoonized version of a sedentary brain. We don't want that, okay? So we really want the lush spring brain. We need to be challenging the brain constantly with new and novel activities, cognitive challenges, social environments, and physical activity. We don't want the sedentary brain. What we've got sitting there in the middle, though, is the autumn tree. And that essentially is kind of what's happening if you're neuropassive. So this is when you're doing your general health. Fantastic for overall cardiovascular health, metabolic health, physical health for your body, but it's probably not significant enough to create the change in your brain to help you move better. So we like to say neuropassive exercise is really good. It's a great starting point, but you need to be doing neuroplastic exercise to really drive change in your brain and to improve the way that you move with your Parkinson's. So that's that spring brain there. Neurorestoration is what is derived from intensive exercise, and that is the changes that actually occur at the cellular level because of the intensity of exercise, and that can be incredibly powerful. So there's some really lovely literature showing the results of forced use, training intensively, and what happens to the cells and the movement of dopamine and how other neurotransmitters are mitigated within system. So really powerful as well. And then I touched on neuroprotection. So again, the literature is starting to show us very compelling results from exercise and helping to slow down symptom progression and to help people protect the remaining viable dopamine producing cells, which is really exciting. One of the first things that we would typically look to do is identify what type of motor presentation you have. So if you recognize that you are quite slow and shuffly in your movements, and that's what bothers you the most, that might mean that you are actually bradykinesic in presentation, motor presentation. And if that's the case, then we would really look to tailor exercises that are specifically designed to increase your scale of movement, your amplitude of movement in a really functional capacity, so that you can get back to doing all of the movements and activities you want to be doing. If tremor bothers you the most, and that's your most dominant symptom from Parkinson's, then you would be considered tremor dominant. And we would do a different style of exercise to, again, reduce the tremor and keep you moving as well as possible over time as well. And if you've had Parkinson's for a little while and you've started to notice that your agility is not quite as good as it could be, you feel a little bit off balance, you're a little bit, you've lost a bit of confidence, you might have had some near misses or possibly even falls, then that agility impaired category would be another one where we would specifically tailor exercises to support all of those areas. So that would be one of the first ways that we would really help you to kind of understand how you need to tailor your exercises to get the most out of each exercise and really enhance what you need to focus on. I did want to just show you here some of the results from a study published in 2023 looking at the PD Warrior 10-week challenge, which is essentially our signature program, not only to help people move better, but also to create really good behaviors, exercise behaviors over that 10-week program. They were able to show at the end of the 10 weeks that the program improved emotional well-being, motor function, and mobility in individuals with early Parkinson's disease. And I can certainly attest to the thousands of people that have done the 10-week challenge. It really can be life-changing for that reason. So if you're not quite sure where to start with a tailored Parkinson-specific exercise program, the 10-week challenge can be a really good place because we help to tailor the program specifically to you. We keep you accountable so that you're starting to learn and adopt those really positive exercise behaviors, and you're starting to embed them into your daily life. And you should come out of the program looking, feeling, and thinking at your best. Anxiety might be one of the things that we also need to deal with the non-motor symptoms of your Parkinson's. So again, this might be another way that we might need to address your Parkinson's. So there's quite a lot of literature also supporting physical exercise programs to support your anxiety management, as well as a whole host of other areas that we might need to look at. One thing that we might also need to touch on is your medications. And so in PD Warrior, we are really pro medication because medication will help you to move better. It is symptomatic management. It doesn't slow your Parkinson's down, but it does help you to move better. And that is really important because if you can't move at your best, you can't achieve the intensities required in the program. And so you won't get the benefits from the exercise or the full benefits from that neuroplastic exercise. So medication is really important, but obviously we want to make sure that you're on the lowest dose that you possibly can be on to make sure that you're moving at your best, but there aren't any additional unwanted side effects. And that can be a little bit of a double-edged sword with levodopa, which is one of the most potent medications that you may or may not be on. But levodopa has been known to be most effective, but it can have an impact on overall balance later down the track, particularly if you start to adopt something called dyskinesia, which is a response to the medication over a period of time. And this has actually showed that levodopa over a period of time will increase postural sway, which we use as a measure of overall stability. And so it can make your overall stability worse. And it can also be a contributing factor to impaired balance as well. So it's really important that we understand what medications you're on so that we can tailor exercises to best suit your needs and time of the day that you might choose to do your exercises as such. All right. Now, this is just the last section because I don't want to carry on too much, but I think what exercise is really, really good at is it's an excellent vehicle for putting you in the driver's seat. And the reason I say that is because taking medication is quite a passive activity. It's very important in Parkinson's to take your medication. But I do think that exercise is the vehicle that gives you more perspective. It builds self-efficacy. It builds your confidence. It's so, so powerful, and it does help to put you in the driver's seat. And so that's why in PD Warrior, what we often talk about that exercise is just one piece of the puzzle. It's incredibly powerful and it underpins the whole program of PD Warrior. But concurrent to that are these other areas. And so you can look here at education and empowerment, which is really important. So the more you understand the condition, how it impacts you, how you need to tailor your exercises, how to create behavior change, what to do when you're not feeling at your best, how do you keep exercising, all of those things are really, really important for long-term success. Likewise is a supportive community. So how do you build the community around you to make sure that you've got everything that you need? You can fill your cup when you need it. You've got support when you need it. You've got the right health professionals on your side. You've got family, friends, work, whoever it might be, they're on your side. And for some people, you haven't told many people. You might not have told anybody. You haven't told work yet. Those are all things that, will need to be discussed as and when is required. But knowing that a supportive community can absolutely pay dividends and be very supportive in your overall management of Parkinson's. And then what we ultimately hope for is long-term behavior change, where exercise becomes a routine part of your day. Not just any exercise, but the right kind of exercise. That needs to be consistent. So we do say with PD Warrior, and this is not to be daunting by any means, but exercise needs to become part of your daily routine. And so the 10-week challenge in itself, it is actually a daily exercise program for the 10 weeks. It might only be 10 minutes or 20 minutes some days. It might be a bit longer other days, but it is something that, again, we try and help people to change perspective, and rather than seeing it as a chore, see it as an opportunity to get joy out of movement and improve the way that you feel and the way that you think, and the way that you feel about yourself as well. And so that's part of that program, is to really start to enjoy movement and the benefits that you can feel in your body from the exercise as well. But it is really important that your exercise becomes consistent. So if you're not sure about PD Warrior or doing a 10-week challenge and committing to something like that, why not just start with daily exercise, whatever that looks like for you. If it's just walking around the block, if it's just walking down the corridor, that's fine. Start with that. And then tomorrow, try a little bit more. So every day you're just building it up one brick at a time. Just wanted to touch on a couple of habit laws again. These are things that we do tend to go through in the 10-week challenge, just around how to make your daily exercise routine part of your lifestyle. So making it obvious. So implementation intentions are one thing. So if you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're meant to do your exercise, but it's pouring rain, it's snuggly in bed, you can't be bothered, then what do you do? So it's starting to identify barriers and strategies so that when these things happen, they don't completely derail your program. Habit stacking, is there something that you already do regularly that you can attach exercise alongside? It might be getting dressed in the morning. You might say, you know what, instead of getting dressed into my day clothes, I'm going to get dressed into my exercise clothes first. Then I'm ready for exercise. That reduces friction and I can just get started with my exercise. And obviously keeping a diary can be very, very useful as well. So at the end of the week, you can tick off, oh, look, I've done 6 exercise sessions. That's fantastic. That's one more than I did the week before. Excellent. And then there's a whole host of other things that you could be doing here. So temptation stacking, building your community, creating a motivational ritual. You might have a coffee at the end of your walk, and that's something that you really look forward to. You might build your identity around a new community, a new exercise. A lot of people will take on lots of different hobbies and new hobbies with Parkinson's. And so that can also help to create a new identity. Where possible, make exercise one of those new hobbies and then create a community and an identity around that. Obviously, the less friction you have, the better. So decreasing any obstacles. You might get your clothes out the night before if you know you're a bit slower in the morning. Preparing in advance and or mastering that decisive moment, like the 6 a.m. scenario I was talking about before, and make it satisfying. And somehow that might come from your perception of exercise, your perception of movement, your joy of movement, the socialization you get from the exercise if you've created it that way, the coffee you get at the end of it, whatever it is, making it satisfying is really, really helpful for keeping you engaged and motivated long term as well. I did touch on building your team. Again, really important that you have the right healthcare team on your side as well. Because Parkinson's is considered to be progressive, it's really important that you do touch base with your health professional team regularly so that anything that crops up can be dealt with really quickly and it doesn't become a big issue. Particularly if you're not noticing things and daily change, it can be that a 6-monthly check-in visit can be really helpful to kind of identify those things. So here are just some of the people that I consider to be really important as part of your health professional team. You may not need all of them. You might only need 1 or 2, and some people will come and go in your health professional team. Physiotherapy, I think, is vital for setting you up with the right exercise program and then touching base every 6 months or so. Occupational therapy can be really helpful to support you with fatigue management, cognitive changes, being much more independent and functional in your daily life. Speech pathology can help with projection of your voice or swallowing if you're starting to experience difficulty with that. Saliva management as well. Parkinson's nurse will be very, very important as well to support you with your medication management. Nutritionists can be really helpful as well, and there's some increasing literature looking at the role and importance of your nutrition and how you tailor your diet. So not having protein around when you take your medications because that can reduce absorption. Lots of different helpful tips that can be very, very important and help you overall with your management of Parkinson's. And of course, your specialist, somebody who is looking after your Parkinson's holistically, either a neurologist, a GP, or a movement disorder specialist. And I just wanted to touch on perception because I think it's really important. And I love this slide because it's just so good to think about the quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. And I go back to the point I made originally around sedentary behavior patterns. If you become sedentary, you might not be able to do things completely independent of your Parkinson's. It's because you've become sedentary. And so if you use exercise as a vehicle to improve your confidence, your belief of self, whether you think you can or you think you can't will really depend on what you're choosing to think you can do or can't. And I've seen so many people that have created a glass ceiling or a stereotype for themselves on diagnosis of Parkinson's to say they can't do this anymore, they can't do that, they've got to wrap up work, they can't take that overseas trip anymore for no reason other than they've been diagnosed with Parkinson's. They are completely capable of doing those things. So my words to you as a health professional, not somebody that lives with Parkinson's, but because I've witnessed it, is don't let that be you. Smash that ceiling. Parkinson's doesn't mean anything. You can do whatever you think you can do, and that's why your health professional team can be there to support you. And last thing is to flip your mindset. So again, this is something that I have learned from our patients. I think it has been one of the most powerful lessons that I've learned as a clinician is to flip your mindset. And so there's a lot of stuff that you need to do to manage your Parkinson's. There can be a lot of medications, there can be a lot of down days. Coming to exercise can be considered a chore. So flipping your mindset, reframing it when you have those moments when you're thinking about exercise being a chore can be really valuable. So one of the quotes that a lady spoke to me about, she said, look, I thought about it being a chore, but then I just did this trick in my head. And I was like, that is amazing. And so we often talk about this now. You don't have to exercise, you get to exercise. And I love that quote because the literature is very strong. It's very compelling for the role of exercise. I know it from the thousands of people that we've helped. Exercise is incredibly powerful for helping you to manage your Parkinson's. And not a lot of conditions that I treat as a neurophysio can be so well impacted by exercise. So get onto it. Try and reframe when you're feeling like exercise is a chore. Well, you know what? You get to exercise and it has an impact. you get to take medication. And again, there might be a lot of medications that you have to take, but medication is really effective symptomatic management, and it's widely available in Australia and relatively affordable. That's not the case everywhere else in the world. And so reframe, yes, management is helpful. Medication is helpful for me to manage my Parkinson's. You get to live with Parkinson's, and this is a really sensitive subject. And as I said, I don't live with Parkinson's, so I have to be careful with this. But a lot of people have changed their lives, created new hobbies, new communities, new worlds because of their Parkinson's. And I would hope the same for you, that there's a silver lining and something positive that comes from your Parkinson's. And generally in this day and age, Parkinson's is something you live with. So managing it really well is up to you and how well you get into the driver's seat. So what is it when you're really struggling with your Parkinson's? What is it that you can reframe to help you really manage your Parkinson's well? Last thing I want to kind of touch on is staying social. It's really important for neuroplasticity. As I said earlier, physical activity is really important, but so is social and cognitive challenge. So novel conversations with your friends, keeping abreast of the news, reading, following TV shows, Sudoku. There's specific exercises that you could be doing as well, but staying social is really, really important, and is one of the biggest, social isolation has been shown to be one of the biggest risk factors for worsening health and increasing mortality, depression, and cognitive decline. And unfortunately, in Parkinson's, if you're not conscious of it, universes and worlds can decrease and decline because of physical inactivity. So make sure you stay as social as you possibly can. Almost at the end here, but I just wanted to touch on this as well. I wanted to just say, be kind to yourself. There is growing evidence around the role of positive self-talk and using asset-based language. And I know on those days when you can't be bothered, you're exhausted, you're frustrated, be kind to yourself, because the better you speak to yourself, the more likely you are to boost brain rewiring, the less likely you are to internalize and increase your levels of anxiety, the more likely your mood is to remain stable, and it will also help you to stay motivated and engaged. So you need to speak to yourself the way that you would speak to your best friend, your loved ones. You don't tend to berate them. Don't berate yourself because you're frustrated. So again, be kind to yourself and think about the language that you're using to yourself, on yourself. So just in closing, I just wanted to say the vision of PD Warrior is to change the lives of those living with Parkinson's. We would love to be a household name to really help promote exercise, social, community, and living your best life with Parkinson's. Our motto is live brave, and that's what we hope for everybody, one rep at a time. If this has floated your boat and you're interested in exercise, I'd love you to come and join us. The first level is probably PD Warrior Plus. This is a self-directed exercise, education, and community program for people. You can come in and there's hundreds of on-demand exercise videos that you can pull off the shelf if you want to focus on balance or arm swing or bradykinesia or walking or whatever it might be. There's hundreds of exercises there tailored that you can tailor for yourself. There's lots of education, resources and coaches tips, live classes, and you can connect with the global community in there as well. So that's a really great place to start. If you want to take a big stand and you want to do the 10-week challenge and get into peak physical and cognitive condition, then the 10-week challenge is probably an even better place to start. And we do these in facilities around the world. So you can go to our locations page and do this 10-week challenge face-to-face in a licensed facility, which is a fantastic way to meet the community there as well. Or you can do it online. If you don't have access or it's more convenient for you to do the program at home, you can also do the 10-week challenge online. And we do often run group 10-week challenges so that you are part of a big global community doing the 10-week challenge all together, learning from each other and supporting each other as well. So I'm going to finish it there. I would love to be able to support you on your Parkinson's journey. There is so much goodness that comes from the Parkinson's community, and we would love for you to be part of that. So if you have any questions, I look forward to supporting you. Hope we can see you in either the 10-week challenge or PD Warrior Plus. Thank you for your time.